Lamau. Yeah, I deserve that. What was your high school experience like? That's a complicated thing to answer. I mean, mostly bad. I really did not. I think I did not fare very well in high school. I got decent grades, and I made some good friends. But I feel like high school kind of represented a unhealthy holding pattern in a way. What's up? Like emotionally gone. Yeah, I felt a little bit that way too. Honestly, the classes where I felt the most like I could that like I was having some semblance of a good time were history classes and my American government class, like my political science class. I took a couple AP courses. In senior year, things got a little bit better because the classes progressed at such a pace that we were able to engage more just in like regular ass socializing and that sort of thing. But, you know, there's really like, I think the fundamental experience was not good. High school was the only time I've like had to do all-nighters to finish homework assignments. Not one time in college did I actually need to stay up late at like through the night to, oh, that was a good blue shell, to like finish a school assignment. But I did have to do that a couple times in high school. I think in senior year. Sent it. All right, cool. I'm going to try to find a bigger room. No offense at all to Epic Meme. Shoutouts. They raced that 1v1 really well. I front ran most of it, but they demonstrated exactly why being in first is a very vulnerable position. So kudos. It was to the point where I thought school stories and anything was like fiction, that people interacted like that. Watch the vid in the meantime? Maybe. Bye. Probably an off-stream thing. Now it seems like we're gonna be stuck in the same small room here. All the other rooms must be full. Or like too far away. I don't know. Just the fundamental experience of high school. Well, back to Epic Meme. Where you sit still in class. For Europeans, this is going to be kind of a horror story. You have to get up early, very early, because school starts at 8 o'clock, like, in the morning. So you have to be there by, like, 7:45. And then from there, it is 7.5 hours with like a meager half an hour to 45-minute break for lunch. It is 7.5 hours of you sit in one class and you have to just sit there and listen, and that's it. And then you get assigned homework for the night, and then you repeat for like anywhere from 4 to 8 classes in a day. Right? We had block scheduling. So for the whole week, we had 8 classes of homework that we had to worry about. But I would only go to 4 of those, or I think it was 7, and we went to 4 per day, and one of them was every day. And so it was 7.5 hours of sitting my ass in one spot, occasionally talking when we were permitted to. You weren't really allowed to get up and go anywhere. You weren't allowed to leave the campus. In fact, there was a cop on site. There was an armed police officer that patrolled the school. And I remember a couple times some kids tried to leave the school campus during the day just because, like, I don't know, fucking whatever. And the cop actually stopped them and physically brought them back to the school. I don't think they had to, like, drag them or whatever, but the cop was like, hey, you can't leave. Sounds like a story of a prison breakout movie, and that's not a coincidence. Most schools in America are designed by the same companies that build prisons. So, you know, I wind up each day with like 2 hours of homework on top of 7.5 hours of sitting my ass down in class and not really getting to do anything, and then the occasional long-term project on top of that too. It was just a profoundly negative experience, and I'm not keen to ever experience again. Really didn't like it. I have a feeling that high school is one of the places where my depression really started to foment, because so much of my life was spent in the K-12 education system, which operates pretty fundamentally the same, with the exception of elementary school. Middle and high school, which is it's like the majority of the time that you're really cognizant of what's going on and you're in school. Most of that time conditions you to live without freedom and to not understand what freedom is or what to do with it. It didn't help as well that I grew up in a suburb where you couldn't really walk anywhere. And if you went outside by yourself, there was a very real risk that you would just get hit by a car and be killed. So I wasn't really free at home. I was definitely not free at school. And this kind of created a really unhealthy pathology, very isolating pathology that I grew to hate. I grew to hate the suburbs. I grew to hate school. And that's why college was so much of a different experience for me. Both positive and negative was that it was so unfamiliar in the degree of freedom that I had. And despite all of the unmedicated depression that I was subject to for 3 years in college, I still look back on it as almost unambiguously the best time of my life. Yeah, basically you go to school and it conditions you to be a subservient ward of the state, right? On top of the lack of freedom, it's like, okay, there's a very pronounced lack of freedom and a very pronounced abundance of responsibility and obligations that I could face very real, very meaningful punishment for that could reverberate down the line. Homework, the sort of menial busy work that you're assigned just so the school can boast that the kids are always like doing something outside of class hours, is a not insignificant part of your grade, sometimes as much as 15%. I remember some of my classes, per the class syllabus, the document that lays out what to expect for the class, my homework was as much as 15% of my grade, which is enough to tank your grade down a letter grade. Which could affect your high school GPA, which could affect what college you go to, which could affect your career prospects. There was just so little free time. And on top of that, it was virtually a requirement. It was not actually required. It was virtually a requirement. It was like a social impetus. Everybody had to be a part of at least one extracurricular activity. You had to, on top of class time, you had to go to a club outside of school. That was part of the school. Fortunately, I just created like a Minecraft club where a couple friends of mine sat down and played Minecraft for like an hour after school, and then we all went home. And I also found Super Smash Bros. Melee Club, which I frequented. That was very nice. But it was just more time on top of the time I was already spending in school that reminded me that I am not free to do what I will. Not even children can escape capitalism? Yeah, not even. And fundamentally, that's like a large part of the reason that school was the way it was. Because college is straightforwardly extracting value out of you in the form of tuition. They can afford to actually take the learning process seriously and act like their job is to teach you how to think critically and analyze critically and write and analyze a study and that sort of thing. But in high school, because public school is free, they have to find other ways to essentially engage with like a speculative economy and boost some sort of numbers. So they do this with like hours spent on assignment, hours spent studying, test scores, and that sort of stuff, which requires treating kids like a commodity, like a tradable asset to be speculated upon and invested in a way that produces a bigger number, irrespective of the consequences that has for the fundamental rights of people, just as beings, you know? I'm gonna throw this so that the group behind me doesn't necessarily get too slowed down. Almost. Oh, I actually missed the trick off of that. Feels like if public executions exist, people would have to pay for what kind of death that they get. I mean, we're not that far off from that, but yeah. We've even atomized the concept of public executions, where a lot of times the family of the victim of a crime, unambiguously a victimized family, will be selected if the perpetrator is on death row, if they are like slated to be executed. They will be selected to watch the execution as it happens, oftentimes by means of lethal injection, sometimes by means of the electric chair. And there are many, many horror stories where the family is like, no, don't execute this person, but the state law is that such and such crime is punishable by death, so they get put to death anyways. You know? Oh, you mean people watching? Oh, okay, okay. That does happen sometimes. Like sometimes a family is vengeful enough that they will choose a less humane method of execution, which, funnily enough, the degree of quote-unquote humanity, like humane nature of executions, goes in reverse chronological order. Lethal injection is the least humane method of killing somebody, followed by the electric chair, and funnily enough, the most consistently painless way to die is firing squad. But that one's the most visible and visceral. So they sort of opt for the more marketable version of a public execution, which is actually more painful for the person being executed. Where if they pick the firing squad, that is the most humane, or like a clean neck snap by way of hanging. Those are the most humane ways to execute a human being if the state is dead set on doing that. But they don't want to do that. They want the suffering, and they want the clean image of humanity. Yeah, overdose on sleeping pills would be the most painless. Probably. But that requires a lot of sleeping pills. And also, like I said, the state is not interested in humane methods of execution. Anyways, what were we talking about? Yeah, we were talking about high school, and I got on this subject because it trended into the discussion of like prisons and prison conditions, because high schools and middle schools are very reminiscent of prisons in America. Yeah, high school was not a good experience for me. I don't want to go back to, I'm not keen to revisit that. I heard Zoran Mamdani is fighting snow right now. Yeah, I've seen. He put out a video of him helping some people shovel the sidewalk. I am Mamdani pilled right now. Oh no. I haven't been shoveling snow, of course. I mean, like I live in an apartment, so like with people who live in a house, that they have like a section of sidewalk in front of their house that they need to shovel, but that's not the case for where I live. I'm gonna chain this. Okay. Triple red's not necessarily the item I wanted. Still fine, I suppose. I think what I want more than anything is another item box. I very much would like that. Oh, okay. Yep, knew that would hit. Okay, they both died and I'm in second now. All right. Your girl has done it again. The town where I live was actually really well prepared for the snow. They put a lot of salt down on the streets and sidewalks, which is nice. You know, surprisingly, the area where I used to live in Virginia did get snow relatively regularly. Like at least once a year, we'd get some decent snow, but they were never prepared for it. And I think actually the reason for that was because they contracted out a lot of these public services. Like instead of it being the municipal authority, the county authority, or the city authority, it would be some private company that the county board had paid to do the thing. You know? I don't remember anything about high school. Surely that couldn't possibly be anything bad. Me, clueless or something. Yeah, the reason I prefaced a lot of my explanation of what high school was like with this might be a horror story for the Europeans is because, as I've been made aware, high school isn't always like that in Europe, but it's pretty bad in America. And that's partly why the AI and short form content sort of takeover of the classroom and the deterioration of literacy skills in people going through the education system has been so quick, has been so fast in the United States because the structure was already kind of primed to do that. Structures of primary and secondary education already didn't give a shit whether you were learning or not. They just wanted to be able to produce a good number out of you to increase speculative value for the city to funnel into the private sector. You know, teachers repeatedly got mad at me for disrespecting hierarchy. I fortunately did not have the same experience. A lot of my teachers were actually very cool. Being in a progressive area, a lot of my teachers were very progressive and understood that like kids want to be contrarian dickheads, which I very much was in high school. I guess you could consider that a form of lashing out under such circumstances where I wasn't really permitted to express myself very much. But I think you were here for the tier list stream. You remember the story about the one substitute teacher that I mentioned who was like, I sat down for the Pledge of Allegiance and he was like, you're disrespecting our country. And I was like, I'm allowed to sit down for the Pledge of Allegiance. He fucking caught feelings from me not pledging myself to be subservient to the state when I was 14 years old, mind you. And it's not an accident, by the way. I used a picture of Wilford Brimley for that video. That's not an accident. The guy did actually look like Wilford Brimley. He was just taller. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, even donate to support the channel. It would really mean a lot to me.